There was a little problem.
Those words will be engraved in the annals of understatement.
Yeah, mother was a cash register.
And she turned a tidy profit, too.
Welcome everybody to another episode. You guys seen this movie before?
I'd seen bits of it. I hadn't actually sat down to watch it. It's one of those movies that was on, like, you'd turn the TV on late at night and there it was, and you'd be partway through it. So you'd have no context. And you'd be like watching it going, okay, this is weird. What's it doing? But having seen it from the beginning to end now, I understand. So
Yeah, this was one of those movies that I watched back. I was 19 when I watched this movie. And it was really interesting. I don't know. I mean, we'll probably get into it later in the show, but since I started my aviation career in '88, and this movie was really interesting to me, I guess because of that. Gio, have you ever seen this movie before?
Never in my life.
Okay, so we're in for a surprise on this episode. So
Yeah, I mean, it was like watching a sexy version of David Bowie.
So we've got the full gamut. We've got yes, yes, no, and no.
Yeah. So, I have a feeling the listeners better buckle up for this one. What do you think?
Oh,
yeah. Okay. So I guess that's my cue to do our next segment. We are Science Fiction Remnant.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is SciFi.
Well, and everybody, you know the drill. That was not a drill. Make sure to, whenever you have a chance, go to This is Sci-Fi
hashtag.
Hashtag, yeah, that's the word. There you go. My mind is like,
it was bad,
and basically, let us know. Go and reach out. Give us a call too on Defining Science Fiction too. But tell me, guys, you have any experience this week? I actually saw lots of engagement with a couple of one of my favorite listeners this week, man.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Deep conversation and discussion, heated debate, man.
The only thing I remember seeing is Only Gian.
Only Gians. No, man, if you would have seen that, I wouldn't be complaining about being poor.
You're advertising your OnlyFans, were you?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God. You probably see someone trying to search for that and not finding anything. So
that's a good thing.
Oh, it's on the dark web.
Yeah, not many are brave enough to go into there. It seems that I'm the one that got getting the deepest in there from the three of us. Which surprised me.
Yeah,
yep.
So for all of you listening out there, this is the reason why we love that hashtag. This is Sci-Fi hashtag is because we have those conversations that we like to have. It almost feels as if we are in the show. We're having the same conversations that we have in the show. And it's just totally amazing. We had really deep conversations last week. And Gio, can you recall I guess we can say we really appreciate the conversations from Kelly. So if you guys want to join the conversation, follow this is hashtag this is Sci-Fi hashtag, and we can talk about anything. I mean, I post. I mean, the last thing that I posted on this is Sci-Fi hashtag is there are rumors out there. There's going to be a crossover Star Trek episode between Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. And that really gets me excited only because the rumor involves two characters from Lower Decks that will show up as live action in Strange New Worlds, and that is, if you are a Star Trek fan, you're gonna find that to be really really exciting, especially if you like lower decks.
Mhm.
So, in short, if you are a sci-fi creator or a sci-fi fan, you want to follow, you want to post on the This Is Sci-Fi hashtag, as well as you're going to find some posts from um, different podcasts. They promote these to the sci-fi community, and you're going to see the new thing that we have going on, which is a crossover connection. This is a little episode that you're going to be seeing on our feed, hopefully weekly, where we are going to actually play to you episodes from other podcasts that we feel you might enjoy. So, as you had heard me and Gio talk in the past, we encourage you to go search them out, and give them a follow, give them a like, and hopefully that you enjoy the show as much as we enjoy that show. So,
Oh, the episode is called "It's So Good." The crossover episode.
Was it?
It's so good.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ba-da-dum-bum-bus.
You said that so fast, I just thought you hadn't heard me, so I said it again.
Awesome. I guess we
Hey,
can move
was
on
it
to the
was it this week that you were doing your sci-fi celebrity crushes? Was that this week?
Oh yes, there was.
I don't remember, but we can do that.
There was a lot. There was another post. Thank you, Ray, for mentioning, where I actually posted, your sci-fi crushes. What are, and there was no limit. You can post as many as you want, and I really want to thank everybody for the engagement. I posted Jessica 6 from Logan's Run. And I see all your responses are great. So I really, really want to thank you guys for the engagement on
You're a
that. It was
pedophile,
really
Robert.
cool.
You're a
What
pedophile,
about Aaron's
Robert.
son?
What? Jessica 6?
Yeah, she's
You-
7 years old.
What? She's
She
a
was
clone.
7 years old in the movie.
No.
You don't remember?
Ray,
They are
did
a lot
you saw
younger.
the same movie we
They
saw?
are a lot younger
Was
in the
it-
movie.
No, you're talking about the book. She's 7 years old in the book. The movie she was
No.
aged up.
She wasn't. Yeah. I'm talking about the movie, dude. keep that only DMs to the fans.
Stop confusing people, Jin.
That's my job, man. That's my job.
Didn't you post Arian's son as one of your sci-fi
Yes.
crushes?
Yes.
Because that's the one I'm looking at now.
Yes. You know what? Let me post a question to you guys. I don't think, maybe I missed your responses because that post was wild. There was so many responses out there. Gio, who do you think? And I'll start with you because you're the newbie here. Who is, or who could you say? And there's no wrong answers. There, you could say multiple people. It doesn't matter. Who would you say would be your sci-fi crush?
Overall, you know who it is. But there's two, actually.
Go ahead.
Morena Bacari, bro. Oh,
Oh, Firefly.
Firefly, Visitors. She's my reptilian queen, bro.
Nice.
And I mean, from Interstellar, man. Actually, Anne Hathaway.
Nice.
I always had a crush on her.
Nice. So the idea is you're not necessarily the actress or actors, but the characters itself, and that's basically where I was posting.
I'm
with that.
sorry. For the record, both of my crushes, I love them. Like, I think that they're gorgeous in or out of character.
Cool. Ray, do you have a sci-fi crush character or multiples? That you can-
Sí,
Well,
from certain
back-
specific railgun.
Back when I was a young lad, yes, I'm not allowed to anymore. But back then, it was Princess Leia in the slave outfit. That was
No shit.
wow. I had
No
the
shit.
poster. I had the poster, man.
Look, if you're a Star Wars and that's not your crush, that's almost a requirement at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. So, for you guys listening out there, this is the kind of fun we have. We go all the way serious, we go all the way interesting, all the way fun. So I hope if you have not been exposed to these this is sci-fi hashtag, I hope to see you there soon. We have a lot of fun, and you can actually tag us if you do. Awesome.
Now, there are some people who would get very angry with me for not saying Alita from Alita Battle Angel, but
Oh, but of course.
she's not a crush. I appreciate that character.
Gio.
It's not that sort of a relationship.
Why don't you leave that to your only Geos, man?
Only
Yeah.
Geos? No, man.
If you guys are, and this is another
Why is
reason
there
why
a
you guys,
bird dancing on his t-shirt?
Here.
you guys should actually watch the YouTube video. You're missing
I don't know that he's had his meds today, Robert.
Here, if I put my headphones like this, I look like Princess Leia.
Princess Leia.
I don't remember Princess Leia having a beard, but anyway.
Hey, it's a modern version.
Maybe the dwarves version did, but not the one I saw.
The dwarf version. Because dwarf women's have it. They gotta skip that in Power of Regal Powers. They actually shape the princess.
So
before I just before you move on, I just want to say I'm looking at that thread right now. It was a very interesting thread, and it was good to see some of the lasses getting involved in the listing and seeing the male characters that they've felt attached to. So and the Mandalorian made it in there. I was quite impressed with that one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Being attracted to somebody who wears a helmet most of the time. I mean, okay.
I added
something more to it than that.
I had to add them. So before we move on to the next segment, I just want to mention that you guys, if you want to be mentioned on future episodes, you could do so by tweeting at us. You can define us, and basically what that is how would you define our show to a sci-fi lover that hasn't heard it, has not heard us yet? Also, you could actually post to the this is sci-fi hashtag, and you could also call our voice line. The voice line is 1-305-563-6334. And as you guys already know, we are planning for our 100th episode. So if you want to leave a message to be played for that show, you can call that line as well. And we will definitely play. We can answer any questions that you might have for the show, for us, or any specific episodes, or if you have a specific episode you'd like us to do. So just remember that number is 1-305-563-6334. And with that, we're going to move on to the next segment.
Shout out.
Well, first and foremost, I want to remember everybody that we are part of the Blind Knowledge Network. So go ahead, check them out. I cannot recommend it they're anymore. They're great. They're fantastic. They have a great array of variety of content creators. So I'm sure that whatever you're into, they're gonna fly your ship. They will. And let's start actually for giving a special thank you to Martha. Her Twitter name says Marta parentheses, not a nerd. Smooth. Her handle is actually Nerdy for History. Thank you so much for all the engagement, the support, and the likes and retweets. Thank you. Also, Korean Manrique. Her Twitter handle is CoreMouse2. Thank you also for all the likes and supports. Always love the engagement and conversation. Keep it going. One of our big supporters and one of our favorite podcasts, Open Pike.
Jesse.
Open Pike. Jesse. Yeah.
And the crew.
Yeah, man. I love always I love all the pull and push that we have in the chat that we have open with him all the time, and with the FSS podcast too, which is another one that I want to give a special shout out and thank you to. Also, let's give a thank you to Center of Astronomical Research. The Twitter handle is UpgradeMeBB1. Always sharing very interesting information about science topics. Love them, man. And here goes one of our favorite ones, actually. Kelly Szentgyorgyi. I said it right.
Woo!
Yeah. And here, Twitter handle is Antipodal. Thank you so much for support, for always picking our brains and keeping engaged in conversation. Much love, much love. Also, Heretical Sayyadina, and her Twitter handle is Sayyadina Heresy. Sayyadina Heresy. Love conversation where, man. If you want to have a hot debate, she's the person to go to. And last but not least, Steve Horizon Brave World, and his Twitter handle is My GhostWorld.
He's
Man, thank
becoming
you
a
always.
regular.
Huh?
He's becoming a regular, man.
Oh, he is a regular man. And I mean, man, we'll leave it up for this episode at those shout outs.
Awesome. So we're gonna move on to the next one.
The Outer Remnant.
And Gio, where have we been? You know, because we kind of know that Ray hasn't been anywhere in this week.
I'm like Dory, man. I have
I had a bad week.
memory.
I wasn't well.
Oh man, we feel bad. Ray,
Yeah,
where have we been, Gio? I don't know. I'm thinking.
Imagine, Robert, that we are Nemo and Dory. You're Nemo. I'm Dory.
What?
What?
You're
What?
Nemo. I'm Dory. Who would
What?
be more likely to remember?
Me.
There you go. Little Finn.
So
We're being in the blind knowledge, man. Good
blind
conversation,
knowledge. We were having a discussion with Joey from Blind Knowledge. We had a lot of fun, man.
Yeah.
I have to admit, we're talking about mainly about our show and its creations and stuff like that. So if you wanted to learn a little bit about our show's creation and everything that had to do with that, we had the questions in there and we had the answers.
Oh, yeah.
So we actually got the privilege of linking it to our YouTube channel. So should we call it interview? It was more of a party than an interview. That is actually posted right now on our YouTube channel. So you can go and find the video and watch it and let us know what you guys think. We really enjoy being there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Ray, do we have the plot?
Man, we should have just continued talking about the movie. Why you brought the plot up?
Come on.
Do we have the plot? Of course we have the plot. I've got the plot.
I have to mess it up.
Plot's good. Plot's good. Seriously.
Yeah, start telling us about David Bowie and he being a cross-dresser.
What's that got to do with this movie?
I have a feeling he watched a completely different movie, man. It wasn't YouTube.
I'm sorry. I'm not saying that David Bowie was cute like a girl, but that girl looked like David Bowie.
Well, the hairstyle when she was in the future, yes, it was a little bit Bowie.
Yeah, I mean, it was David Bowie, but less bony and with boobs and a nice ass. Yeah, she had a nice ass.
Oh my
Don't know
God.
about now. I mean, honestly, our main character, I don't know how the fuck he actually could resist not staying in the hotel when she actually was trying to manipulate and guilt trip him to stay.
Probably because they were doing it all night and he was spent and he just couldn't do it anymore. So
Dude, spent
he's out of there.
Oh man,
he just had to go to work, man. He couldn't. He was completely tired.
Yeah,
well,
doesn't sound to me. He went to work.
She was his
Not
mistress,
tired.
but he was married to his work. So
Yeah, exactly. Before you move into the plot, I just have to say, you guys, did you know this was based on a short story?
yes,
Figures.
Because you put it in because you put it in the Trello. That's how I knew.
Okay, so let's go ahead and just for all of you guys out there who are very curious, it is called Air Raid by John Bartley. So you can actually
That's
Google
the
that.
short story that it was based on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
So
Ray, go ahead.
yeah, this is the movie called Millennium, which was made well before the Millennium. I believe the title is referring to the 1,000 years between when they were interacting with the present, in inverted commas, and where they come from in the future. So it was released in 1989. The box office was 5.8 million, so not very much. It may not have been advertised particularly well. I don't remember seeing it at the cinema. It may not even come to the cinema in Australia. I don't know. And it doesn't have a budget in the wiki article, so I can't give you that. Okay, so the plot of this movie. Now, you can find this movie on YouTube. So just do a YouTube search for it, and if you haven't watched it yet, have a watch. It's not particularly long, and then you can come back and not be spoilt by what I'm about to say. So,
When
in
this movie aired?
1989,
When this movie aired?
89.
Okay, we need to tell our listeners watch out for spoilers.
No, we don't. But I'm just telling them an easy place to find it so they can watch it if they don't want to be spoiled. It's up to them.
Oh, everybody's spoiled nowadays.
That is true. That is true. In 1989, while on its landing approach, a U.S. commercial jet is struck by another plane from above, which was apparently a DC-10. The pilot struggles to control the plane while the first officer checks the passenger cabin. He was actually going back to see how much of the wing was sheared off because they knew they'd lost one of their 4 engines. He returns to the cockpit yelling that everyone is dead and the corpses are burned. National Transport Safety Board investigator Bill Smith investigates the accident. He and his team are confused by the first officer's words on the cockpit voice recorder as there's no evidence of a fire before the crash. Meanwhile, theoretical physicist Dr. Arnold Mayer is professionally curious about the crash, which borders on science fiction. In a lecture, he discusses the possibility of visits from time travelers. In the future, pollution is rendering humans unable to reproduce. Teams are sent into the past to abduct people who are about to die. The plane crashes were a part of this plan. The abductees are kept in stasis until they can be sent to the far future to repopulate the Earth. Most of the current population is in poor health, but the time travelers, mostly women, are relatively healthy and are given the best food and care to pass as 20th century humans. Present-day air is too clean for the time travelers to process. They smoke cigarettes to mimic their own timeline's atmosphere. Every incursion into the past causes an accompanying can't even pronounce that word. Accompanying a timequake with a magnitude proportional to the incursion's effects. Time travelers try to minimize their effects by replacing the humans they abduct with organically grown copies. This explains the co-pilot's comment about the charred passengers. The replicas had been pre-burned in preparation for the crash. In 1963, a time traveler on a plane is shot before it crashes, losing a stun weapon as a result. The weapon winds up in Dr. Mayer's possession, setting his path to investigate what is happening. 25 years later, Smith finds a similar artifact among the wreckage of the crash portrayed at the beginning of the film. Worried that the discoveries made by Smith and Mayer may change history, time traveler Louise Baltimore is sent back to 1989 to deter Bill Smith from pursuing the investigation. She gains Bill's trust and seduces him in a one-night stand, attempting to distract him. Bill gradually becomes suspicious and visits Dr. Mayer. Louise materializes from the future and reveals her mission to them, hoping they will voluntarily keep the secret. During the conversation, Mayer accidentally kills himself while reassembling the stun weapons. See, he clearly didn't read the safety instructions.
Yeah.
Mayer was instrumental in the development of the gate technology that made time travel possible. This death results in an unsolvable paradox, a force infinity timequake, which will destroy the entire civilization of the future timeline. The only course of action is to send all the people who were collected in the distant future to the distant future before the gate is permanently destroyed. Bill and Louise, Bill, and Louise, who is pregnant, step through the gate together and disappear. As the explosion destroys the gate and as the blast wave engulfs Louise's android advisor Sherman, he quotes Winston Churchill. This is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end. It is the end of the beginning. Roll credits.
And this
Now,
is
one more thing. I apologize if that sounded a little bit confusing, but because they were jumping backwards and forwards in time, and Louise's timeline was different from the standard timeline of the movie, like the year's timeline. She was jumping back to before she met the guy the first time, and then she was jumping back to 1967, and it got a little bit confusing. That's why the plot seems a little bit all over the place.
And you know, I have to say, in retrospect, when I saw this movie for the first time, the end of that, I got psyched because I was hoping a part 2, which never came.
You wanted to know where they went to.
Yes.
They went to Logan's Run.
Oh, thank you. I needed to know.
And then they got chosen for the carousel.
Yeah, because they were too old.
I can't, you know, you're right. I can't find how much this movie cost to make. It did made a total of $5.7 million. But I don't know how much it cost to make.
Well, there was that massive set piece of the time travel building, in the internals of that building, which they blew up because, you know, it's not a good sci-fi movie unless you blow up all the scenery at the end. So,
well,
yeah, I don't think it would have been hugely expensive, the other bits, although, you know, all the busted up plane bits. That scene at the start where they're flying over a crashed plane site, unless that was a real crash plane site, it probably would have been a bit expensive to set up.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, overly simplifying this, although this movie has its issues, I really enjoy this movie. More so when I watch it initially, but every time I watch it since, I really like the movie. If you can do a general consensus, what was your? I mean, is this something that you consider an enjoyable to you guys, or considering there's issues in it, and we'll definitely talk about those pretty shortly. What was your first impression on this movie?
I told you,
Well,
man.
see,
I think that
Go
the
ahead,
future
Jay.
was too dirty. That's it.
What?
The future was too dusty and dirty and gray. That's it. And you tell me why.
Do you expect any
You
different?
go, Ray. You go, Ray.
Well, I when I was watching the start of this movie, my wife watches so many of those air crash investigation shows. I was thinking, like, shit, I'm watching an air crash investigation movie. It's like, not another air crash investigation. But obviously, you know, it's kind of fun when you're watching something that you feel like you're very very used to, and almost sort of you've got a resistance against because you've seen so many of them, even when you didn't want to. And but there's something niggling at you. There's a detail that's different, and you're like, okay, there's something sus going on here. I need to know what it is. So that keeps you watching, and then as the mystery starts to unfold, you go, So I mean, that's why I wanted people to go and watch the movie before listening to the plot summary, because it is a movie that relies on you as the viewer discovering what's going on.
Mhm.
Just like the main character is trying to discover what's going on, you're basically following along on his shoulder, finding out what's happening.
Yeah,
Conspiracy
there's
theory.
so many questions developing as you watch this thing, and you're wondering. I actually experienced this. I watched this with my wife, and I can see how I was pausing the movie multiple times because she has a question, and so far, for the most part, most of the questions were answered with me saying, "It you will understand later in the movie. They will explain it in the movie." Um, did you guys think, in your particular experience, that that was what happened? I mean, aside from the ending, did you feel in your experience that as you watched the movie, as those questions were generated in your head, that did they all get answered eventually, or did you had questions left after the movie ended?
You go, Ray.
Well, I mean, I think it was fairly smartly written. I don't know the execution was as good as it could have been, maybe budgetary reasons. I mean, they gave it a good whack with the story stick, but um, as I said before, it's one of those movies where you get all these little hints that something's not right. Like, why is a physicist kicking around at a plane crash site? That just doesn't track. And then you
Yes.
want to know more about that guy. And then there's this beautiful woman who shows up and immediately runs off instead of handing out the coffee, and you're like, huh? and then she gives it when she goes to pick him up to try and distract him. Which you only find out she's actually doing later, because her timeline runs different to his timeline. You sort of she gives this throwaway comment about, oh, I had to get out of there. I thought I was going to throw up. And he goes, oh, yeah, you get over that eventually. So it was a good excuse, but it didn't quite track based on what you were seeing. Like, you knew it made sense, but you knew it didn't track at the same time. And I thought that was some fairly smart writing. And like I said, it started out as a crash investigation show, which I've seen hundreds of, and you kind of get a bit numb to those. And then there's all these little things that are niggling at you, and it's those little niggly things that make you keep watching because you want to know why there's a physicist at the crash site. And they keep, like, the news reporters are bugging him about why he's there, and he's giving these sort of evasive answers. So you want to know what's going on with him as well. And I personally thought it was quite well written, and it's one of those movies that sort of, what seems like throwaway lines aren't later on, and it clicks when you get further along in the movie. And I think that's really good entertainment. It keeps you thinking. It's not just spoon feeding. If you're thinking about it, you get more and more curious, and then as your questions get answered, you go, that's what it was, and it starts to unravel and make sense to you. So I think they did a good job on it.
Yeah, I had to mention that because every time I watch this with someone new, that's usually what comes up. Is the questions. As a matter of fact, there's one that I can pinpoint. The Geo you actually mentioned is why that the woman was trying to control him by keeping him in his room or with her, or basically getting to quit his job. And it actually did. It was one of my questions when I watched this movie initially. So it's kind of interesting to see that Gio had the same question I had when I watched this back when I was younger. And again, my response is always the same. It's like, it will make sense later.
Sounds
What
like
do you
life, really.
what do you think, Gio? I mean, did it become clear later, or do
Yeah,
you
it
need more
became clear. I
explanation?
mean, no, her motives were clear enough. for her to be manipulative or trying to take control over his decision.
At first, I was like, "What's up with her? Who does she think she is? She just met the guy."
Yeah,
now
but at the same time, I was like, dude, your job doesn't have a pussy.
She's expecting him to quit his job the first time
And
they
then he
meet.
tells her he hasn't taken vacation in 6 years. Dude, what the hell is wrong with him?
Well, he did mention over dinner that his wife had died and he never got into another relationship. So obviously he'd thrown himself into his work and become married to that instead.
Yeah.
And he did lament that the job had, got him up in the middle of the night and he'd been away for 3 months and basically hadn't spent the time with his family that he needed to. And that's why he didn't feel like he deserved another family, which is why he hadn't tried again. So there was a lot to unpack there in his situation.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so I just had that question because it happened to me. I'm wondering if this is something that it's common about the movie, but and again, this like Ray said, I remember the first time that I watched this movie. It was really really interesting because, and it was more so interesting to me because I started flight school in '88. This movie came out in '89. So it was especially interesting to me as a pilot because, and I'm not 100% sure, but this is how the organization, the NTSB works. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the National Transportation Safety Board. It is an independent U.S. government agency responsible for investigations of accidents. Usually, whenever something happens in the air or something, you're supposed to report it. And they're doing all the investigations, especially when it comes to things of the nature that we see in this movie, where huge airliner like this crashes. So,
well, there was two. There was a DC-10 and the one at the start.
So, why I find it interesting is the fact that it at such a young age, and me so curious about aviation, it gave me an insight as to what would those investigations could look like, which was very very it was very interesting to me because I obviously never seen one, hopefully never will in life, in real life, but it's still interesting to see how these investigations are being conducted. And then they throw you a left field with all those weird things that started to happen early in the movie, like what you mentioned. You have that scientist, and he he comes back and he says, Bill, I can't remember verbatim, but basically he's wondering what is a scientist doing here. I mean, this is completely outside their lab. What your field is. And I find it really interesting how he said, scientists needs to go out more. Maybe we'll learn something.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a great number of throwaway lines in this movie. It reminded me actually of Ghostbusters and the throwaway lines and the way the plot was, well, not so much the plot, but the script was put together to tell you a lot more than you think you were being told. And actually something that's been left out of the plot summary there that was actually quite important was that Bill Smith was actually on that plane in 1967, that he was the only survivor of that crash.
63? I think it was 63.
No, yes, it was early 60s. Yes, so 63. Yeah, so he'd actually met Louise, the time traveler, when he was a kid, but she wasn't a kid, it was the mission after the one she'd done to try and stop him from investigating. So her timeline ran completely different to his, and she'd met him 3 times. The first time was the 3rd time she'd met him. It was the first time for him, 3rd time for her. So yeah, that's why it got horribly confusing. But yeah, the crash in the 60s, where Arnold Mayer got the stunner. Bill Smith was on board, but he had a different surname at the time because his mother remarried. So that's why Arnold Mayer had worked out who he was when he met him later on, and maybe Louise hadn't realized it was the same person as well. But he was the only one who survived the crash. So he had become an air crash investigator because he'd been the survivor of a plane crash. So it's all these loops in this movie. It's quite intricate and well written.
You know,
confusing if you're not watching carefully.
I really, really love the aesthetics like this movie has, and especially when the movie plays with your head with timeline. And what you were saying, Ray, he met her in 63. She met him in 63, but doesn't realize that it's him because he already met her in 89.
Yeah.
But when we go back to 89, the first time that he met her, she knew him, but he didn't know her. The second time in 89, he knew her, but she didn't know him.
Yes.
Completely outside the timeline. And we were kind of talking pre-show about this and how, we only see time in linearly like this because, that's how we are third-dimensional beings, right? This wouldn't be an issue with someone that it would be in a higher dimensional plane to kind of comprehend. And I think that's the reason, one part, why, we can understand it, obviously, after much explanation. But it's not natural for us to understand the flow of time in a different way. Does that make sense?
Well, it's kind of like in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the creatures that live in that tunnel between the Alpha and Delta quadrants. They live outside the flow of time, so they experience time all at the same time. So they're a higher dimensional being or beings, and Cisco has a lot of trouble sort of dealing with them because they're talking about stuff that he hasn't experienced yet, as if it's already happened. So it does mess with your idea of causality and free will and all these sorts of things, and that's also echoed in this movie when she's talking to Sherman, and she says, "What about my free will?" And he says, "Oh, did you misplace it? I will go look for it." Which is completely snarky. He's a sarcastic son of a bitch. I think that the personal robots are actually made from the remains of people who have, succumbed to all the diseases and stuff that humanity's suffering from, because you kind of look at him and he looks like a person with a sort of a exosuit on to move his body around. So I actually think that their personal robots are actually rebuilt humans.
Yeah, that would make sense.
That could be cyborgs.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
whether or not it's a real person's brain or it's a robotic brain, I don't know. But he was really snarky. So
He was one of my favorites. He was one of my favorites in the whole show, in the whole movie. It was one of my favorite characters, actually.
Oh yeah, and he said there's no place for me in the future, so he just went like, I've had enough of this shit. I'm out of here.
I always wonder about that. I mean, not because I feel sad or anything, but why didn't he go?
Clearly, because the USB plugs that they were using in 1,000 years wouldn't fit in 10,000 years, so he'd have nowhere to charge up.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna go back to earlier and a question that you have, Ray, and then we can move on. The crash site. Yeah, you had a question about the crash site. The outdoor set used for the 747 crash was so convincing that pilots landing at the Toronto airport were actually radioing the tower, asking about there was an accident or
So it was a set. Yeah. Okay.
just envision this. You're flying to an airport and all of a sudden you see this crash site. That's I don't know, man. I think there should have been some sort of like communication out to pilots landing there. I don't know. Maybe there's no way to do that, but that could have been a scary sight if you think about it.
Yeah, most definitely. I would have been freaking out on my plane.
The first thing you would think is like, are we able to use this airport? I mean,
now let me ask you something. How long did we start using black boxes? Because they did completely omit the existence of it in the crash site.
No, they did.
They were looking for it.
They were looking for it at night when the scientists went in and they went through the air. Remember the bill?
That's true. They took it.
It's like, hey, I got it.
True.
So yeah,
but, I mean, no. I mean, I think that the funny thing with what you guys were saying earlier too about time traveling is like the causality. The premise is this paradox that they continue to just fear constantly. Whenever something is not done to actually fulfill that reality they saw happening or they knew it happened, they didn't want to change it. And something that further on in the movie, actually, the scientist is talking to the whole council about, like, he actually understood the whys and it's. He wanted to know what the red lightsaber dildo was for, but but he understood the its and whys of how the people from the future were behaving and how they had to act upon, so it would not affect reality. Basically, when he actually put the example of you would not go if you could try travel and kill Hitler, even if you could, because that would actually be atrocious. And so
yeah, I kind of like this movie actually explained, like when the scientist was actually giving a lecture and he was talking exactly about the grandfather paradox. This movie, I don't know if it was treating the audience as dumb to try to explain something. I mean, granted, just put yourself in.
that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson does.
This is going back to 89, obviously, not now. But the question is, like, I don't know if they were, trying to treat the audience as dumb or doing them a favor, considering this was in 1989, by explaining the grandfather paradox. We take it for granted that now. I like to think that we have a greater percentage of people knowing about what it is in comparison to the percentage of people that knew what this was back in the 80s.
Let me give you a counterpoint to that. So it doesn't matter what time of, whether it's the 80s or the noughties or now, there are always young people growing up who haven't experienced the concepts. So there's always going to be somebody in the audience who has not heard of this yet. It's statistically unlikely that everyone will know what you're talking about. So, the people who have heard it before and go, oh yeah, I know that. I mean, it's a 2-minute description. just to get
Mhm.
everybody up to speed. And if they can't, wait 2 minutes and just be reminded of the context, then they're not particularly good, enjoyers of science or science fiction, because you've got to give the presenter or the movie or whatever it happens to be the time to get everybody in context and up to speed. And it wasn't very long to wait. I mean, if it was a 45-minute diatribe about it, yeah, I could see your problem, because people would get bored, but they should be able to last 2 minutes.
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and try to explain it again. It's going to be on my own words, obviously. So the idea is this. Say I invent the time traveling machine and I go back and kill my grandfather. Then I was never born. And if I was never born,
What are we doing here?
how would I be able to build the time machine to go back and kill my grandfather? And that's what's the definition of a time travel paradox is, and kind of like what they explained this in this movie. Now, I think you guys let me know if this is my own perception, or it's just untrue. But I feel that paradox was more of a issue back. It's still a thought experiment, because obviously no one has a time traveling machine. But it was that we know of. Because what they explain is, and I'll go ahead and I'll talk about it in just a minute. But the time machine. I mean, the paradox was a bigger issue in thought, as a thought experiment back when the movie was out, like in the 80s and the 90s. I don't think that is an issue now, or a problem now. Do you guys consider that explanation, the grandfather paradox, has become a fallacy today in comparison to what it was like in the 80s and the 90s, or is that just my perception?
Ray might have something more wordy to say than me.
Ray, they're putting you on the spot, man.
Oh, really? What a shock!
Yeah,
Never happens.
I think it
You
has.
go first,
but-
Gio.
No, I mean, I just think it has, but I think that, again, we discussed this in previous movies too. Each movie reflects what science thought was at the moment too.
Yes.
So it's bound to be outdated by now. It's been decades, 4 decades. 3 decades
89.
actually. That movie is my age, actually. Exactly.
Well, that movie was at the end of the Cold War, right? So that it was more the fighter's not a lover. Of course, you can go the other direction, and you can go on the lover's side of thing. And there's actually a song by Ray Stevens called "I'm My Own Grandpa," which is the lover, not a fighter version of the same paradox.
Nice.
You've never heard of that one?
Oh, wow.
No, but it sounds to me like that's the whole idea for actually the movie that we cover. What's it called?
Back to the Future?
No. Back to the Future. No, with Calvin Klein.
Yeah.
No. Predestination.
Yes.
That's predestination.
Yeah.
That's the idea for
Oh my God.
predestination. The guy actually became a transgender, then he went back and fell in love with himself, made love with himself, and have his own baby.
For all of you who haven't heard that episode, I invite you guys to go download it. But basically, this guy became his own dad, his own mom, and himself. He gave birth to himself.
And then he raised himself and killed himself.
And killed himself. So if you want to watch it,
That's
you have no idea. You had no idea. And he
haven't seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Watch the movie first, and then go download the episode and let me know what you guys think. I was just like, oh my freaking God.
It's
Yeah,
very
it's too hard.
entertaining, man. It's very entertaining, but it's totally I wouldn't say a mind fuck. It's just completely not. It doesn't make sense.
Predestination, is it?
Yeah, with Ethan
Yeah.
Hawke.
Oh my god.
It was she was born as a girl,
Also, a girl, yeah,
but she
and then
had
she became a man.
dual um
Oh yeah, that's true. She was like Aphrodite's.
an Aphrodite. So she had a what was it? She had
It's like a mix of
oh my
having
God.
both genitals. It's like
My
having
head,
both genitalia, but basically one of them is predominant on your biology usually.
my head is hurting trying to explain this. She has a baby and then cannot be a woman anymore for some reason. So they had to.
She doesn't get to have the baby.
Well, she had the
Remember?
baby, but they steal it.
No,
She had the baby.
that's true. That's true. She had
She
the
had the
baby.
baby. So then she, for some reason, she can't. That was an accident or something. She can't be a woman anymore. So then she becomes a man. In the future, she goes back to herself when she was a female.
They
And
cannot
he
choose for her. She doesn't get to choose being a woman or a man. They cannot just make the decision
exactly.
for her. So they take it
Exactly.
away from her.
So the point that I'm making is that later on in the future, she goes back to the past and made love to herself. And he is the person who she had him with.
Mm.
And he's his own
And
deadbeat dad.
Oh yeah, let's
and
leave it at that.
and he has a whole bunch of she has a whole bunch of really bad genetic abnormalities because there's no outcrossing.
Exactly.
Figures it was a
So,
cuckoo.
we're gonna leave it at that. I just want to bring that up because it just kind of hurt my brain just thinking about it, and I'm kind of
It's hurting
curious.
my brain, and I haven't seen it yet.
So yeah, this movie, that's the kind of movie that I like, and the point that I was making by bringing that episode up is the fact that this movie deals with time travel. Obviously, not to that extent, but I love movies that they not only have this aesthetic, which correct me if I'm wrong, but this has the old sci-fi aesthetic that I'm so nostalgic for. And although it was 89, it was still part of the new wave of the new sci-fi that was, came to float. But aside from that, movies that they deal with jumping back and forth, kind of like Predestination, in time and place. I find those movies very fascinating.
I feel like they did a good job of starting off by following Bill, and then they once part of the story had progressed until it got to the first meeting between Bill and Louise in the hangar when Bill stunned himself. Then they swapped over to following Louise, and then went back through the situation we'd already seen from Bill's perspective, and we understood that why Louise hadn't met him before, but had met him before, but hadn't met him before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is crazy that I understand that. And it's crazy to think that if you guys seen this movie instead of listening to us first, you would have also understood that statement. It's insane.
It's one of those.
I love the movie for it.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So we started talking about paradoxes, and this is something that we kind of briefly talked about in the pre-show. I feel this movie was maybe in my head, and I think Gio agrees with me. I'm not sure that Ray, because Ray, you were in a pre-conversation, but I feel the movie was slightly inconsistent.
Yes.
In the fact that they're dealing with everything as time travel from the paradoxical sense. Yet in the ending, they're treating time travel as I would treat time travel. And the fact that, and you probably heard me say this in previous show, and you probably disagree, just like Gio disagrees, which is okay if you disagree.
I merely disagree with you because of the heck of it, even if you're right.
So what I was saying is the way that I deal with time travel is, to me, paradoxes don't exist, because if you actually cut your way out, and let me go back to what I was explaining about the grandfather. So if I invent a time traveling machine and I go back and kill my grandfather.
No. We're talking about you going back and being your own grandfather.
No. That's don't confuse the listeners, man.
I know scientists, and I don't have. Look, I know scientists, and I don't have a pretty huge stick. I mean, a PhD.
You kids go screw yourself a completely different meaning.
So basically, here's the way that I look at it, right? I invent a time machine. I go back and kill my grandfather. Right there, I cut my way into my own universe because I was not born there. So when I go back to my present, in essence, what I'm doing is I'm going to another universe where I was born. Because the universe where I was never born, I already closed that door. So in essence, what I feel I'm doing is,
then you'll find yourself. There'll be two of you there.
No.
So what happens to the self of you that was in that other universe if you close the one that you were at? Ah, gotcha.
Oh my God.
Does it make sense what I'm saying, Ray? Scientific the shit out of it for me.
Me and Ray disagree, man.
So you just magically you close a branch of reality, a channel, right? And you just magically poof out of whatever else you want to pop into, so you can pop back into there.
Dude, you make the travel in time every day, and you don't encounter yourself. So when
I
you
don't
go
make
out
the travel back to it.
No, you cannot go travel back. We agree in that, right? So we can only travel forward.
Well, you're going back to kill your grandpa, so we are doing that.
No, but I'm saying in my example. But what I'm trying to explain to you is, in the fact that we travel, just like Ray, can you repeat that again? How we travel and how we are all time travelers?
Yeah, going to the
all
future.
time travelers traveling at 1 second per second into the future.
Yes,
exactly.
That's perfect. But then we're talking about killing your grandpa and you coming back to it.
Every day you make examples. I mean, you make choices that change who you are. Every single day you make choices. In I want to say in my world, in my head, but
in your world, yeah, we know you're cuckoo, man. We know you have imaginary friends and stuff like that. We all do.
So you make a decision, but that person who made the other decision still exists in another universe. And that's how the multi-universe explains that in one universe you could be a doctor, in another one you could be a police officer, because all the decisions that you made take you to the person who you have become at that particular moment. And
now
that's
you kill your grandpa. You kill your grandpa. What are you doing after that?
Dude, I'm trying to explain it. You're jumping back. You're not even understanding what I'm saying. So we talked about this in the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
We talked about the exact same thing. So the way that I look at it is, we are time travelers. We're traveling, and Ray, I really want to see your thoughts in here when I finish speaking, and see what your thought is on this over here that I'm trying to say. But
hence, in Everything Everywhere All at Once, she never left the plain reality she was at.
She made choices.
Yeah, but she never left the plane. So all the other me's or whatever, they died because of independent choices that were not related to her.
But they existed.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
Was one. She was a cook.
You're giving me the reason, not knowingly, because then when you kill your grandpa, you existed whatever you want to bounce back into.
You're going back to that, and I'm trying to get away from that to try to explain that. You're not letting me
get away from it to explain it.
So basically, this
I'm trying to defuse my question. I'm trying to defuse my question.
Let me ask this, Ray. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Because I'm not. I'm not being trying. They're not letting. Gio is not trying to let me explain it. So maybe you can explain it in a different way.
Gio's trying to defend his point of view by obfuscation, which is a pretty slack way of doing it.
What do you mean? What do you mean? You're always sided with Robert, man.
No.
I'm not
Okay,
siding
I
with
don't
Robert.
mind fighting you both.
You're not letting Robert put his point of view forward, which sucks.
Oh God! Oh,
Man, you must call us idiots with class.
I want to hear Ray. I want to hear Ray to see if at least I made a point in explaining it, because I had to admit sometimes I'm really bad at explaining things, and I agree with that.
Oh, I've noticed.
And I know that. And
I've noticed. Okay, so okay, Gio, keep your trap shut for 5 minutes and let me get some information out here. Okay.
You want me to mute you? I can mute you.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay, so with anything complicated that you're trying to put forward as a theory, and this happens in science a lot. There's lots of complicated things out there. Where we are with our understanding at the moment, there can be different ways of looking at it. Now, Robert has one way of looking at it, which I tend to prescribe to, and Gio has another way of looking at it. Gio's looking at it as a single timeline, and you're just messing with it and breaking it. But what Robert's talking about is multiple. I'll go back to we did an episode on Steins Gate, right?
Yes.
And in that they talked about world lines and how they differed, and you jump world lines when you change things, right? And he was trying to get to the Steins Gate world line where the two women he cared about most in the world survived. That was the one he was trying to get to. And I reiterate that I think Steins Gate was a very good way of handling time travel.
Yes,
and,
because
and,
he didn't actually get in the machine when it killed his grandpa. They were sending messages to affect the time, but they were not personally going there.
Well, he was sending his memories and his consciousness back into his previous self, which is also one of those circular, well, how would you get to there in the first place if you've done that? In Gio's, well, there is only one timeline and you've broken it hypothesis, then yeah, it doesn't work. But if you look at the one that they followed in that show, which is different world lines, and you jump between them depending on what you change, then there's a whole lot of possibilities and realities out there, infinite numbers of them, where things are slightly different. Now, what Robert's putting forward is that if you go back and kill your grandpa, you're switching to a world line where you're dead, but you've come from a world line where you're not dead. So you can exist in a world where your grandpa is dead because you come from a world line where he's not.
Wouldn't you disappear?
In a base, no.
No.
You wouldn't disappear.
I feel Gio is contradicting himself.
No, because then that's the thing. If you don't disappear, okay, you killed your grandpa, so you are not existing on that timeline anymore, correct?
On that timeline, yes.
Correct. Yeah. But you've come from a timeline where you did exist.
That's right. Exactly. So right now on that timeline, you are absolutely nobody. So you're going back to a timeline where you exist. Correct?
Yeah. You exist in a timeline where you're already dead, and people would look at you and go, hang on, who the hell are you?
No, you're not already dead. You never existed to begin with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's that. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. You're not dead. You never existed. So there's no record of it. Now, so you have to go back to somewhere. Right?
Why?
You're going back to some other reality. That's the premise of the theory.
Why?
So,
why?
I don't understand.
So you're gonna stay. So if you kill your grandpa, you're gonna stay there where you never existed. No, right?
Well, time is going to move forward. The event that you caused will then cause a change in reality, and you will then exist in a reality where you shouldn't exist, but you do exist because you caused something within it.
That's the answer I was looking for.
It is a paradox, but it doesn't mean that you would vanish. It means
Exactly.
that you don't have a reason to exist there, but you do exist there.
Yeah, so it will
So
be an
people are going to be
anomaly
looking
on
at,
reality.
people are going to be looking at you and wondering where you came from.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. That's actually the answer I was looking for.
Was it?
Yeah, because what he's telling me is his premise of his theory is that he's going back to somewhere else where he actually did exist.
No, I said
And my
if you
and
go
my
back,
argument is, if you go somewhere else out of that timeline that you affected, there's another you there. He's not gonna disappear magically because he has his own shit going on. He's a whole different person. Make
well,
sense?
I
It's like everywhere, every time, all at once. If she actually, instead of connecting to these other selves and actually entangling herself with the knowledge only and tapping into it, and instead of that, if she would have traveled to any of them,
Mhm.
that would be something else. I'm going more through the Tenet kind of like theory. If you travel in time, you still see yourself in there.
Can I say a comment and see, Ray, tell me if that makes any sense, because maybe it just makes sense to me. But the sentence that I want to say is, energy can never be destroyed, only transferred.
The full quote is, energy can neither be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed.
Mhm.
Jet Li, the one. He traveled to many multiverses to kill himself. So whenever he traveled to another reality, this other self didn't disappear. He had to go and kill them.
Yeah,
There's
but
another copy of him existing there.
I
And
don't
that's
know
what
why
I'm
I have
saying.
an issue with that.
Like on the grandfather premise, when you say you kill him, you either stay there. If you go anywhere else in another reality, there's going to be another you there waiting for you. Not waiting for you, but living its own shit. That's what I'm
Well,
trying to say.
I don't
It doesn't
think
magically
I
puff it
love
out.
I love the movie, the one. I love the movie, the Jet One, Jet Li from the one. But and Ray, let me know if you agree with this or not. But that is the one thing I had an issue with, is the fact that he went and saw himself. And for some reason, I don't feel that would be possible. But
Well, they have a good premise for that movie because he doesn't absorb himself everything. He just distributes equally into the other selves that he has. Which
yeah,
which which is more plausible that if he goes and kills himself, this only one of him is the one that is gonna benefit from it.
is there any
So
science behind that? I don't think I
I,
read
I don't think
anything.
so.
yeah,
I
I
don't
don't.
think
I don't know why there's only 100 and something realities, because that doesn't quite follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They never
But
explained that
you
either.
understand what I'm trying to get at, Ray?
Yeah, I can see both ideas, like the two ideas that you're both working from. Now, when you change the timeline that you've experienced by going back and killing your grandfather, you create a new one where your birth wouldn't happen because your grandfather was dead.
Mhm.
But you exist there because you interacted with it. So now you're on that timeline. So you don't have a link to your past, but you're still there. You can't not exist. You can't just and disappear because of course, the you that would have existed in this timeline is gone because you killed its progenitor. But you're there from another timeline,
It
on
negates
another
itself.
world line. So you're like this lost piece of
An anomaly.
universal data that has no link to anything. How that would affect your existence, we don't know, because this is all theoretical.
I think it
But you
balances.
then you can't get back to where you existed and where you came from, because that one never happened and you're stuck in this one. Now, the only way to get back to where you came from is to go back and stop yourself from doing what you just did. Because we've already decided that within the premise you can travel back in time, because that's what you did to kill your grandfather.
Yes.
So then you'd have to go back and stop yourself, because you can only go back. You can't go forward because you've broken that existence that is you.
Thank you. I feel comprehended.
But
The
you know
only
what?
way to fix it, in inverted commas, is to go back and stop yourself
Yes.
from doing what you just did.
Now I can tell you something, Gio. There's a lot of people that I talked online. Well, Let me rephrase it. Half the people agree, and half the people disagree. And out of those people think that the multiverse theory is just a nice ploy to make nice time travel movies,
Yes.
Yeah, could well be.
which
Again,
makes it easy for
the reason I'm
storytelling.
saying time is just another plane of existence we've created due to our lifetime. Plain and simple.
Until we can actually measure it with a piece of equipment and produce data that solidifies these ideas, they're nothing but ideas. They're all theories, and theories gain traction within the scientific community because they seem to make sense to more people, and poking holes in them comes to a point where you can't find a fault with it. And this is all thought experiments, which I know that Robert loves. But until we can actually create a device that will do this, and we can gather some data and actually show recorded data, not just people's memories or anecdotal evidence, but until we can actually record it and say, okay, here's the recordings. This is what changed. This did this. We have video recordings. We have this. We have all these other things that all say this is what happens. It's all theory. It's all the whole thing.
All theory.
In fact, our existence is theory until we can prove it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's people who think that the whole universe is just a virtual reality simulation created from the edge of the universe.
Yeah.
And there's some people who prescribe to that, but there's no proof. It's just theory. And there's lots and lots and lots of theories. The whole point of science is come up with a theory and then try to disprove it, because you can't actually prove a theory. You can only disprove it. And if a theory stays unprovable long enough, it becomes accepted until it's disproven. All the stuff that we know in science
is a very good word. I love how you choose words carefully. You said accepted, doesn't become factual.
That's right. It's accepted until something else disproves it. My perfect example is that my father, back in the 30s, so he would be nearly 100 now if he was still alive. He was taught that the atom was the smallest particle of matter, and it was inviolate. And before the decade was out, well, actually, it was just after the decade was out, so it was in the early 40s, they split the atom. And now we have subatomic particles, and we have all this quantum physics, and none of it was, I won't say what didn't exist, I will say that it wasn't known at the time. So science is ever evolving. Science, we find out more stuff, and things that we thought were inviolate, which means, couldn't be possibly change, suddenly change because we find out more stuff. So nothing that science can give to you is likely to stay the same forever. Science tells you what we know at this point in time. And so don't think that science is inviolate. It's not.
No, absolutely. That's the beauty of science, and that's what I like about the spirit of scientific research, is that it never claims to be absolute. It just claims to be what's known and used practically until proven differently.
Exactly.
I mean, I hear this all the time from Carl Sagan and from Neil deGrasse, Bill Nye. Whenever they're talking, they make sure that they bring this disclaimer whenever they're talking about something that is considered the science at the moment, or the law of science. They make sure that they say that.
Well, we are three-dimensional beings made of this coarse carbon-based matter that have a certain amount of ability to understand what's going on from our own perspectives. And it doesn't mean that it's the only perspective. And as we evolve, if we become beings of energy, which some scientists believe that eventually we will, and if we move on to higher planes of existence, like fifth, sixth, seventh dimensional beings, we will then understand the universe in a completely different way.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's metaphysically is said that a deity of God is basically just a being that is on the infinite level of dimensions. basically.
Yeah, but then we could have a whole show about what is infinity as a theory and a practice.
There's actually a very interesting
Yeah.
documentary about infinity on Netflix that I will tell everybody to go watch it. It's just called like that, Infinite. And it's quite interesting because it's just a lot of scientists and mathematicians and physicists trying to explain the concept of infinity.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a concept. We can't see infinity, we can't touch infinity, we can't measure infinity. It's a concept. And the whole point of concepts, much like time travel, is that we need to be able to think beyond what we know now so that we can move science forward. If people never came up with new theories because we weren't thinking beyond what we know now, then science would not move forward because there would be no impetus to find out more.
Yeah, it will be stagnant.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
we would stagnate if we didn't have theories and if we didn't have these thought-provoking ideas and people pushing forward to try and find out if they're right or not. And a lot of the times they're wrong. In fact,
most of the time,
a lot of the major discoveries that have been made in science that's pushed science forward have been accidental. They've been completely out of left field. People weren't trying to prove or disprove that at the time, but they discovered something completely different. Holy crap.
Yep.
You know, there is a paradoxical thought that had me. It was last week. I was thinking.
How could that be? You said that you don't think that paradox exists.
Where, and let me explain why. Right, we have science and a scientific process, which is try to measure, try to get proof, physical proof, because we can't really trust our senses. But the way we interpret those experiments, the results, the proof, all this stuff, part of the scientific process, you have other people interpreting without faulty senses. So we have our brain interpreting what our eye sees. So, and I'm trying to explain this. It's a little hard for me to explain because my brain was hurting at the end. And I don't know if a brain knows where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going. And I mean, the difficulty of that is we create meaning from experience, and that's made at an individual level.
That is the reason I feel strongly why we have so many peer reviews with so many different variations in results or the origin, the actual experiment that is being done.
Yeah.
And why I think science is so important is because we do these experiments when you look at a peer review process in a collective way among the different scientists across the globe. And that is hopeful for me because we have kind of like the check and balances, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yep.
But it just makes me think that we are taking readings in precise equipments for scientific experiments, yet we are interpreting those readings with our faulty
Yep.
meathead or
Yeah.
Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, yeah, I totally do. I mean, if we can't trust our senses, so we have to measure it, how can we trust our intellect to then take that data and actually get something meaningful from it?
Yeah. It's the loss of integrity of the data on the absorption of it,
And I do, and again, why I call it paradoxical is that I do love that fact as well, because we don't have just one guy reading. We have a multitude of teams reading this and coming up with their own results. And when you put that body of knowledge together, something of the truth must come out.
This is why my creed in life have become one single thing. Everything in life, and you two probably are gonna agree with me in this, It's a matter of consistency. And when you make cross-reference with those papers and theories, that's where you're gonna find truth too. It's inconsistency. Because they are gonna be consistent with each other, even though they have completely unaware of their source. These two people don't know each other. They probably didn't study in the same place and they don't have the same background, but they came to the same resolution somehow, independently. And this
Can I
is
blow
like,
can I blow a huge hole in your theory?
please.
Well, it's going back to the whole, splitting the atom thing. Everybody in the scientific physics field was consistent that the atom was the smallest particle of matter, because no one had worked out yet you could split it. So I would have to add a caveat to your statement, and that would be at this point in time.
Yes.
With our current knowledge.
Yes.
That is what we understand.
Yes. Now, can I actually poke a hole in the hole that you poke on mine?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to take the hat for that.
Oh my God, there you go. Gio is getting serious. For all of you watching the YouTube video, man, Captain Chaos is getting serious.
Yes.
He took his hat off. We're all in
basically, just with the premise that you said about the atom theory, thanks to that and the consistency that we have finding that, we were able to evolve it to something more refined that lead us closer to the truth, even though we're not there yet. So that consistency is paramount for us to move forward and not become stagnant in moving into a wrong direction or something.
So you're talking about the consistency in us
cross-referencing, basically.
Searching for the truth with scientific experiments.
Exactly. And I mean, I just want to say, like, we're talking about, we're in the era where knowledge is the easiest to get access to. These are the reach of your fingerprints and your stuff, But just like it was said from the beginning of time, a great good can be used also for great evil. Yes. And that's why we have so much ignorance nowadays. People don't want to think by themselves. People don't want to even sit down quietly in a room with their own thoughts, and much less actually go and do the work of researching whatever somebody else told them, instead of just taking it by the word. Most people are like, "Oh, where do you hear that? I heard it from the internet," Or you ask them, they see a news, they are looking at a biased source of news. They are not cross-referencing, and this is the beauty of scientific research. And what I like is that most of them strive to be unbiased about their own decisions when they're looking for a truth. They're not saying, this is what I think. No, this is what I think, but this is all the research I did to compare it to my thoughts, which led me to. So they're giving you a reasoning behind an opinion. It's the difference between having an opinion and having an informed opinion. It's like a Brazilian saying that I like. Opinions is like buttholes. Everybody has theirs. But when you're having an informed opinion, you're putting research to back up the data of what you're trying to stand for.
Yeah,
that is giving an actual reasoning. It's creating a foundation on that argument that you bring in. It's not just an argument on top of a cloud.
I feel like this is my week for caveats, but can I add a caveat to that?
Of course. This is the caveat verse.
No, exactly. Even I want to write a script for a movie called Caveat. I just have it about us guys. The Caveat, the story of science fiction. Remember, but the caveat on what you're saying, Gio, is people will attempt to be unbiased, but it's almost impossible, because everything that your understanding of the world is built on creates a bias.
Mm-hmm.
And
most people are not counterintuitive neither, And
I mean, rare. You're not going to go back and research the veracity of every single thing you ever learned at school that your knowledge and understanding of the world is built upon. Yes. Your parents will have told you things that were wrong. Your teachers will have told you things that were wrong. It's quite well known that classic textbooks have faults in them. Perfect example is taste buds. We're taught from biology textbooks that the human tongue has areas that taste different things, and it's only in those spots where those things are tasted, and it's complete bullshit. In fact, there are taste buds running all the way down your throat. and that's why when you're been drinking too much and the stomach acid starts coming up, you can taste it in your throat because there's taste buds down there. But the textbooks don't tell you that. The textbooks are working on this fallacy that comes from 1900.
It's under your tongue.
Update it. Knowledge is one of those things that people don't spend a lot of time going back and checking the veracity of base things. They learn it when they were a kid and they just follow it because back then they didn't know that they should, doubt everything.
Wouldn't you say that some of the most eminent discoveries and scientific theories that stand believable to today actually do the work of updating itself when they find something, because it's not about going through every single thing. It's trying to root it out to every single thing related to the topic you're trying to research.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in the field of biology.
Most people don't bother.
Yeah. No, most people don't. But I will say, like, for example, let's say Albert Einstein. Like, I don't think that he ignored algebra and he just went full physics and mathematics on his. He actually went through all of it, and he went all the way back to its roots to try to understand and get to wherever he got with EMC squared.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Let me mention. I would be extremely happy if instead of getting this response, person A tell me, "Oh, I learned X on the internet," and I said, "Do you have the link?" And usually the response is no.
Yeah, Wikipedia.
Let me go find it. No, not even Wikipedia. The answer is either I look it up or I don't remember. That's usually the answer that I
read it somewhere.
In the
internet. I read it on Twitter.
I would be extremely happy if that person comes back with a link.
Mine things usually when they ask me, I said that I read it on Twitter by Optimistic Aussie.
Now I know you're full of shit.
Shout out to that guy, by the way.
I hardly ever post on Twitter, so I know you're full of it.
Oh, if not, I read it from David Birch.
Nah, he posts a lot of it.
Oh my god!
Oh man, stop giving up our older egos. Batman and Robin will.
Hey man, flattery is the best technique. I read Sun Tzu, the Art of War. Flattery, man, I can get under your skin and get you to actually favor me not knowingly. Mind control exists.
And you're giving out the secrets, man.
I'm at the point now where if someone's flattering me, I know they want something.
Yeah, I want to be favored. But this is like an anime, man. I'm like that guy. I'm fighting with you, and you're like, "What did you do?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, I did this, and that, and this is the secret to my technique." By the end of the fight, you're actually able to beat me up.
Oh my god!
Can I bring things back to something serious for a second that occurred to me while Robert was giving his point of view there? It's not just whether something is what we understand right now. It's also your ability to understand what you're being told, which varies. Everybody doesn't have the same ability to understand things. You're talking about Einstein, right? Now, he was a genius. Now, we can't think like geniuses can, so we couldn't replicate what he did. So we can't verify what he did because we're not geniuses. Mm-hmm. And now, I don't mean to be rude, but the dumber you are, the harder it's going to be for you to follow what we're saying and do any verification on anything. Yes. And I'm glad that I have the intellect that I have because my life would be a whole lot more boring without it. But there are people who are smarter than me that can think of things that I will never think of and understand it where I won't. So we all have our limitations in that regard as well.
No pun intended. I think it's all relative. And I say that because you also thought of things that those people would never thought of too. I bet my ass.
And
Robert too.
That.
Even me, and I mean, don't go further. Geniuses, even though they're geniuses, they have lacks in other areas of their lives too.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true. Yeah.
usually there's a toll for that. It's like a blind person. A blind person have way more heightened senses on all the other senses that make up for that lack. You know, for the sight, for example. So like you cannot whisper next to a blind person in a whole house because they're gonna hear that shit. While you can whisper next to me and I won't hear it because I'm half deaf on my left ear. You know, uh, but basically, and that comes to, even though those like genius or like IQ, and actually Einstein came out with this, or Dr. Seuss. No, it was no, it was Einstein actually. There's an image on like an old cartoon on the newspapers, and he has different animals, and he's saying that our schooling system and our education system, it's a single channel, and you cannot fit every single person that there exists under the same way of learning because we are all different, and because of that, we don't know where every single person has a chance to really excel. That's why most people might find themselves or what they're really good at halfway through their life, at the end of their lives, or at the beginning. It will all matter depending on the course of their life and what they go through. You know. So you could have like, I think that Pablo Picasso was not famous until he was middle age. He was maybe almost 60, 50 years old when he started becoming very famous and good. And who knows? Did you know that Adolf Hitler liked art? You see, so like basically it doesn't, like, for me, that's what I don't let myself be bound to, because I'm not great at mathematics, for example, or something like that. I don't think that I am dumb, you know. Most people allow that to rule who they are too, which is something else, being unruly or being somebody that doesn't allow the outside elements of life control their decision making on who they want to be and who they are too. So I mean, to me, both of you at your own way, you are mad geniuses, you know, because you do things that those geniuses we talk about will be completely clueless ruling over it.
Listeners, you hear it here from Captain Chaos himself. We are all geniuses here.
Thank you, thank you. I am not.
So-
Thank you, thank you.
So what? We all work at the Apple Store.
No, I don't work in there. I will have to live.
Sorry, I had to do that.
I will have to live in a downtown, live in a flat over there, and also have my personal barista.
Well, let me ask you something. Those geniuses, what they would have to say about the year 2989 in this movie?
That I was born in that year. The best thing happened that year.
2989? Damn.
Wow, you're
29
born nearly 1,000 years in the future. That's pretty impressive, Jimmy.
Oh, no,
So when did
no,
you come back?
1989, 1,000 years before. That's me in the future, man, when I travel. Trying to get my great grandfather to die.
I'm
Kind of
using this
the
segue to
reverse
come out-
grandfather theory.
my
You see how stupid I became right away?
I kind of bring. I'm kind of trying to bring ourselves with that segue back to the movie because of a question that
If you
Captain
just
Chaos
before you
had.
do that, I just wanted to make one comment on what Gio said.
Oh, okay.
And that is that when you're younger, you want to be the best at everything because you want to impress people. But as you get older, you realize that that's not really possible for any human being, and you specialize and you become good at a particular area at the expense of a lot of other areas. And then you realize that, you know, being a proper adult and functioning within society and all that sort of thing doesn't require you to be good at everything. That's the whole point of having society, is that, you know, we all support each other with what we're good at and make up for what we're not good at by getting help from other people. So that's the point of society, is that, you know, people can specialize and not have to be good at everything, because if you're not good at something that's going to impact your life in a negative manner, like, you know, back in the caveman days where everybody had to fight off the ravaging beasts or just die doing it. I mean, in modern day society, you have soldiers who go to war for you because you're not a soldiery type. That's not your forte. we segregate ourselves in society into things that we're good at, because there's no point doing the things you're really shitty at and dying because of it.
Yeah,
it's pointless. So go and do what you're good at, and don't worry about not being good at other things. There's somebody else in society who's good at that. Just be kind. Accept that everybody has got their own fortes and their own places where they suck. And then you become humble. You accept that everybody has their place and everybody's good at something. And even those people, you know, like the homeless people who've lost their way, they were good at something once.
Yes.
And they've lost their way. And if you can help them find their way, or, you know, give to a charity that will help them find their way, and they can come back and start, you know, being part of society again. But the whole thing is do your best to do what you're good at and add that to society. And don't feel bad that there's things that you're not good at.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the whole point on life is to leave this planet a little bit better than we found it. You know, if we're able to achieve that, or like Robin Williams used to say, like, if on your whole life there was one person that you were able to laugh, it was all worth it. You know, you were able to make somebody else say better. And I mean, it's just like you say, everybody has their own struggles. Everybody's fighting their own demons, and nobody knows about that. You know, and I think that the problem is that we try to see the world like the world should be, like we are, and the world is as it is, regardless of us. You know, and on top of that, we are animals that live on a constant state of comparison.
Oh yeah,
our whole system of knowledge is based on fully comparison for everything that ever existed and all of our experience all together mashed up. We are ourselves basically a conglomeration of all the people that we've dealt with since birth, and that's what constructed us as who we are in personality. You know, and the problem with that is that most of us live life thinking it's a race against others, when the only race there is against ourselves to try to be better than whoever I was yesterday.
I saw a good quote there the other day. It said, "The person who dies with the most toys is still dead."
Nice. So what I was saying earlier was, and you know, I use a segue. It's like, what did the geniuses think about 2089 in this movie? It's to try to answer a question from Gio that we had at the time that we were actually watching this movie. And I also at the beginning of this episode, Gio mentioned how everything is, you know, dirty and bad. And do you remember the response that I gave you, Gio, on when we were talking over the phone?
Yeah, and I remember the answer I gave you.
That their answer was climate change.
Then I told him, well, guess we could not science our ass out of that one. But that's a problem too. Like, and we've spoken about this before. It's global warming is part of a cycle of the Earth, for starting. But the problem is that with the birth of industrialism, we have also accelerated that process, and we have made damage on the Earth that was not being done on that cycle. So we are also changing the process of that cycle for future generations, for starting, and it's not going to be the same that it's been for before. Every time that cycle completes itself, it will not leave Earth however it was again, or however it was progressing. It's like the multiverse thing. You do a decision that changes and forks out to a completely different outcome, and that's what we've done with the cycle of global warming. Because global warming, some people think that global warming, and that's just ignorance. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm the ignorant, but global warming is just a cyclical process that Earth goes through in long spans of time. So it's many lifespans for humans. You know,
the way that I look at that
and
is,
we change it now with that, with the contamination, all that. We're just making it worse, and we're making irreversible changes on it.
The way that I look at it, it is a cycle, right? And it's an I don't know if I want to say undulating cycle, So you would have cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot. It's a cycle, right?
Yeah.
And many people don't really understand. And Ray,
Don't go
let me
further.
know.
Noah's fable on the Bible, for example. To me, that's the great flood, the great flood. To me, that was part of the cycle. That was part of the cycle. And after that, we there's not like whatever got flooded still flooded. There's part of the earth that are under the water now that were cities before. But I
So
think that that's all part of it too.
what I was trying to explain, and you guys let me know if you understand it, is most people don't understand the meaning of it is a cycle. Maybe I am the one who doesn't understand it. But it is possible to look back and see how Earth was colder
Yeah.
before.
Hence, let me make a
Or
parenthesis there. To me, a cycle in simple words is just a process that happens periodically in repetition.
exactly. So what I'm trying to say is many people don't understand this is a cycle. There's a possibility you're going to look back and you're going to see a time in the Earth where Earth was colder, and you're going to see it colder than now, and you're going to see a cycle on Earth that the Earth was hotter than now, because it's a cycle. It goes up and down, up and down. What I understand you're saying is something that I had thought about, and again, I don't know if I'm incorrect in my thought process here, but we're accelerating that cycle. So that undulating cycle
We
is
are,
just getting,
but on top of that, we're changing it too. That's the problem with contamination.
exactly. That's the whole idea that I'm
So,
trying to say.
so we're accelerating it and we're changing it too. It's not gonna be the same that it was before, neither. It can be more aggressive. It's not gonna behave the same. We're changing that behavior that Earth has, because Earth is an organism itself. So we're changing that behavior, and on top of that, Earth is just every year going apart and apart from the sun. Very little, but like at some point, Mars was like the Earth probably. It wasn't a livable, hospitable zone, and it probably was harboring life too, of some kind.
So to go back to what I was saying, I'm trying to finish a thought here. Many people don't understand this, and I seen, especially this week, how some people have actually sent me links where there's people saying, but it is proven. I talked to some scientists that said that on this date, the Earth was actually colder than what it is now, or the opposite. On another link, well, the Earth was actually hotter than it is now. And I do understand that, and that is not that to me. That's not proof. The global warming is not happening. It seems to me
I'm just
like,
waiting for my turn.
yeah, and I'm going to let you, because I really want to know what you think, because maybe I have it all wrong. But to me, the we're accelerating this, and it's getting out of hand. And the fact that yes, it was colder, it was hotter in the past, doesn't mean that this is not going to get out of hand to the point where we can't control it anymore, and the cycle just going to go out of whack, and we are in trouble. And this is what I feel happened in the end of this movie, and the reason why these people were trying to go to the past
Yep.
and rescuing the people that are supposed to die to try to help humanity survive. Now, I get you, and for all those people who send me those links, I understand. That's not proof to me, because it is a cycle. The whole meaning of a cycle, it goes up and down, up and down. So, Ray, let me give you the mic.
No, wait, because I'm gonna open the premise for. Well, actually, I want to prepare the set for him. He's a biologist, and I just want to make a point to what I'm saying about irreversible changes to that cycle. Do you know that most of the oxygen we get comes from coral reefs in the oceans?
It's not coral reefs. It's
Nurseries.
small. It's small. My brain doesn't want to work. It's the stuff that the whales eat. I'm trying to remember the name.
Plankton. Plankton.
Plankton, yeah, it's plankton because plankton are one of those rare organisms that can photosynthesize, and they're spread out across all the oceans. There's plankton blooms and there's areas where there aren't any, but generally most of the oxygen that we breathe comes from plankton in the oceans. It doesn't come from the Amazon. I mean, the Amazon makes some, but it also uses some.
It doesn't
Plankton's
make 30%.
Pumping out all the oxygen. So, but if we poison the oceans and kill a plankton, we're screwed.
Oh yeah. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
We're collecting CO2 right now, and that is a scary, scary thought to me.
Yeah.
Because
here's the thing, and here's my point too. The changes that we're making irreversible. In all these past cycles the Earth has gone through of global warming, oceans were not dying. Now you have whole colonies of coral reefs that are just going completely dead, bony, that are not being able to sustain life, where fish are having to migrate or they just die off. And that's why we have so many species that are being extinct slowly, and we have so many species that are in danger, and we're making so much effort to keep them alive, but we're doing it on a kind of like a big cage where we're giving it captivity but keeping them alive, but they're not living anymore under their natural circumstances that they were meant to live.
I like to give Ray the mic because
he can take it out.
Very curious to know his response to my comment.
Okay, so I'm going to take the middle road because that's usually where things lie. Like, people have opinions, and most people are not completely wrong, and most people are not completely right. There's usually nuggets of what people would consider truth within what people are saying, and other bits that are just not thought out fully. The way I look at it is that you're not looking at the full gamut of the situation. The situation is human society. We kind of need it. So we don't want it to end, right? We don't want civilization to collapse. We don't want all our creature comforts, all of the, oxygen we breathe and the energy that we want to use and the food that we want to eat. We don't want that to end. Now, people say, oh, it cycles and it's cyclical, so it's all fine. It's not. Because in none of those cycles has there been a 9 billion human population civilization existing.
Exactly.
This is different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could say, oh, but there were lots of dinosaurs. Yeah, what happened to them? The situation changed and they didn't make it.
They make a lot of industries and global warming and die. No,
the situation changed and they didn't make it. They were using up oxygen. And suddenly there was a big change to the system and they didn't make it. In previous times, you've heard of the ice ball Earth?
Yeah.
That they believed happened, where the Earth's temperature dropped really, really low and most of the planet was covered in glaciers and snow for millions of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that wiped out, 95% of the species. And it all had to build back up again. Now, sure, everything that we're doing now to the Earth may be recoverable, but not with us still here.
Correct.
Okay? Either humanity has to change what it's doing,
or disappear,
has to reduce its numbers significantly, or has to go some fucking place else.
Yeah. Agreed.
You can have the cake and eat it too.
Probably all three of those things. Because what we're using up now is not being replaced nearly fast enough. It's not sustainable.
No.
And we're basically shitting in our own nest. And the greed of people in power who just want money and don't want to have to spend the time doing it sustainably are leading us down the toilet. And we are going to be flushed eventually. There's going to be too many people. There's going to be not enough food. There's going to be too much destruction of the environment. It's not going to support us anymore. The human population will be forced to decline because the haves and the have-nots, the haves will survive. The have-nots will die. They'll die off because there won't be enough food. There won't be clean water. The disease will get to them. They won't have medicine and they will die.
What happened
Numbers will have to go down. We can't keep going up like this. The Earth cannot sustain it. There's only one planet so far that we know of that can sustain us. And the cost and the required technology to get somewhere else that could do it is completely beyond us at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm watching what Elon Musk and SpaceX is doing with Starship, and I think it's great, but it's not going to be enough to save the human race.
Oh no, it's just a cradle. That's just a cradle of starting. That's not even advancement in technology compared to it. We don't have anything that can actually give us interstellar possibility. Nothing.
It's not even the end of the beginning. It's the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah.
To borrow a line from this movie.
I mean, at this point, interstellar travel is just unrealistic. It's impossible. You know, unless like what we talked before, we're gonna put just several generations of people in a ship, and by then our exoskeleton biology is gonna be so fucked up that when we touch freaking ground, we're gonna just get crushed by it. You know.
Yeah. If we survive cosmic radiation in the first place.
Yes, exactly. That's another thing
that's going to be very difficult. But what I was getting back to with the climate deniers is they're people who don't want to have to deal with the fallout, so they're just still trying to make their money and pretending that the negatives don't exist. And the negatives column will come back and bite us in the ass as a species.
Yeah.
And we will probably die out. I mean, you say, oh, it's a cycle and it'll cycle around. Yeah, it'll cycle around, but it'll cycle around without us. Because we won't survive.
Earth will be okay. Earth will be fine.
Oh, Earth will be okay, but you will not recognize it. And it will be millions and millions of years.
Yeah.
Before it.
I think that by then Earth's not gonna be on the hospitable zone either.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to find another planet either or by then. And I mean, we're not even a population of living beings class 1. Robert?
The thing about human understanding is it's very limited. They talk about things that occurred over millions of years as if it was a week and a half. And a lot of people don't understand the time periods involved in these cycles. They don't understand how epically long these things take and how much has to change. The fact that we've done what should have taken, maybe 100,000 years in a century is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And they're just saying, oh, but it happened before. Yeah, but it was a damn lot longer. And the world managed to deal with it because it was a damn lot longer. The fact that human civilization exists is an outlier. And a lot of people don't realize this. The Earth has been in a 14,000 year sort of mild zone. And that is the only reason that human civilization has managed to get to where it is now. When humanity was a lot less technologically advanced and able to defend itself somewhat against rapid changes in its environment, like disasters, humanity was nearly wiped out, they believe, back when we hadn't left Africa yet. It got down to hundreds of people because of natural disasters, because we had no way of dealing with it. Certainly having more people in the world means that a lot more can die before we're a non-viable population.
Exponential.
But it also means that we're destroying the Earth at a more rapid rate than ever before in the history of anything. Yeah. It is the first time that a biological organism has had this much effect on the world. The first time. And we don't know what that's going to mean. We can come up with a whole bunch of ideas, but we really don't know. And we're all sort of sitting here going, oh, it's a terrible thing, isn't it? I might go get some Maccas and smoke a cigarette and do all these other things that I enjoy doing. And you multiply that by 9 billion, and those are big changes to the world.
Yeah.
So we really have to sit back and think, okay, we mightn't see the world completely change so that humanity can't exist here anymore, but our children or our children's children might. We're basically stealing their future by not addressing these problems now.
That's practically what it is. and that's the greed of the individualism too. It's like most of these people think, oh, I'll be dead by then, so they don't give a shit. They don't think that they cannot take all that wealth and all that money with them, that it's gonna stay here. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how rich you are, you gotta poop, you're gonna get sick, and there's sickness that you cannot pay your way out of it. That's proven too. And I mean,
Yeah.
going back to the premises of the movie, like I think that, like, you see, like, it seems that they don't play in the movie got to uh, if they got to actually win over mortality, but it seems that they can heal anything, because they don't say if these women in the show are old or young, do they?
They don't explain it.
They
They
don't
don't
explain it,
explain it.
but it seems that
There,
they have cheated death, apparently, right?
there were a couple of lines where Sherman says, "Oh, maybe I should replace those kidneys."
Yeah, exactly.
And so they had some sort of genetic engineering where they could engineer replacement organs and things like that. I found it really interesting that when she got back to the future, he said, "Oh, you didn't smoke enough."
Yeah.
That was a telling statement about the
Man, she was smoking camel.
content of pollutants.
That's freaking harsh. That's like getting in the back of a car in a muffler and smoking that shit. Oh my god!
But she was puffing away on cigarettes even while she was eating, and Bill was like, "Wow, you got a pretty serious habit there." And she's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, I'm doing this because it's like my breathing apparatus. Like the Predator needed a face mask so that he could function properly in the Earth's atmosphere. That was her face mask. She was puffing away on a cigarette like, oh God, now I can breathe properly.
I find that really, really interesting about this movie and how they are playing with, how the effects on Earth are on her present, and how, going back in time, the Earth's atmosphere is completely different. She couldn't really sustain it without smoking.
Not only the atmosphere, basically the whole structure of humanity as a community was changed, because you don't see militant force. Everything that exists lives to save the future.
And another question that I had too, if you think about it, she did mention that they can't give birth anymore. So that leads me to a question: where she came from?
Well, I don't know if you know that there already exists and is operational already. There is a factory that is a womb that can actually bring babies without a mother. Do you know that?
Let's assume that that's the future, right? On
So
this
there's
movie,
a factory of babies.
where would they get? Because you need to, you need an egg, and you need a sperm, right? Or is this all cloning from some sort of DNA?
I think it could be cloning, and it could be that maybe the conditions are not good for a woman to become pregnant anymore, but that doesn't mean that a woman does not produce the eggs and a man does not produce sperms. So they could still, it's like a factory becomes your surrogate mother, So you want to have a baby, you can go and have a baby. Let's take your eggs, let's take my swimmers, and let's take it to the factory, And,
I
and
found it
genetically modify.
I found it interesting that she stated that people can't reproduce anymore, but then she got pregnant from having sex with a man from the past.
Exactly.
So it may not be the women that are infertile; it may be the men.
I was thinking about that
It
too.
could be radiation and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So Sherman at the end said, "You're pregnant with his baby. You need to go with him to the future and create a future because you're like the first pregnant woman in a long time." And it's like, well, who knows that pregnancy is even viable? It could be mutated because of the environment that she's been.
Because of her genetics. Her genetics could be completely different to what a woman is today.
And this whole shoving people 10,000 years in the future or however long it was and just hoping that it's okay for them. I mean,
they should have known. They should have known what's going on, really.
That was the question. It's like they are currently in the middle of a huge paradox. Or that's how they call it, right? When the red bulb goes in and they have all those waves and everything got destroyed and supposedly it's going to be a big explosion. Where are they going? Isn't this like? I had the same question.
That's a conundrum. That's a conundrum to their scientific and technological advancement. If you think about it,
Well, I also had a problem with
Ray. Like it wasn't very well thought out in there neither.
I also had a problem with the fact that a time quake caused things to explode. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Wouldn't they just cease to exist and something else would exist?
Well,
implode. If anything, you can call it.
Why did it give them 2 minutes before it blew up? Like, why did they have that time? Shouldn't it just change everything?
I can stretch it a little, like I normally do.
Exactly.
If you guys listen to the show, you know that I like to stretch things.
Yeah.
He
likes to Disney the shit out of things.
These instruments are sensitive. I am not going to say a thing, so you guys got to go listen to YouTube and see what he just posted. I'm not going to say a thing. You guys got to wait a month. But anyways, this equipment is a sensitive equipment that measures and displays changes in the timeline. So if this is a sensitive equipment that does that, obviously from actually being able to see a paradox displayed on that huge thing, then it is not far for me to believe that they're in some sort of controlled environment inside whatever this was, which seems to be some sort of inside of a building or maybe a cave. They are some
control. If not, it wouldn't look so dusty and like I wouldn't notice it.
Well, it has to be controlled because, for again, I'm stretching things here. For the equipment to shake or explode, to me, it's because they are trying to. This is a control sensitive equipment that is trying to measure changes, and these changes go beyond the measuring ability of this equipment. So it what's the word that I'm looking for? It's outside the requirement operational limits, if that makes any sense. And when you have something goes outside the operational limits, something would happen. Either it breaks, or in this case, explodes. But then again, that's just my thought and me stretching this whole thing. But yeah, I do agree. The fact that if this ends in 2989, okay, the paradox supposedly just ended, and they're sending people in the future to what? And I guess
they're trying to send the people past the singularity that destroys their civilization and wipes out humanity. They're trying to send them past that to a world that's recovered from the mess they made of it. But how do they know how far to send them, and what are they going? I mean, they could land in the ocean and drown, get eaten by sharks or whatever the hell sharks turn into by that stage. They could end up on a planet with no oxygen because it's been.
That's like the joke you posted about a guy asking the genie, "I want to go back to where I was born," and then he goes poof and appears in outer space.
Yeah, that's another thing. They could end up in the middle of space.
Yep.
How do we know that they
I think for the defense of that argument, I think that they have placement of time travel well thought out, because they can even capture a fucking airplane, and they can put a person in a moving airplane while traveling in time.
That's what I was
getting. They have good, accurate aim.
I will cover that in the final segment.
But here's where I'm going, because I know this, and we've talked about this a lot, and I know it's obvious from this movie that they have excellent aim. But how do they know planet Earth did not explode?
I don't think that they did, because they play it like it was just a joke, like it was just a shot in the dark. Oh, let's send in 10,000 years. Like that was like, what the fuck, man? Like he should have said that, but he should have said it like the humanity will be already restored by then, like knowingly, because they actually show even that device that they can even look into the time.
And they can't look past that. What will they call it? The Great Barrier or something like that? I forgot the name now.
I think that just was created to give more exclusivity or more value to each trip and each jump.
Mhm.
So it would not become something that they could just toggle with and go back and forth and change whenever they needed to. Like when things are finite, they become more valued and more people are more cautious about making choices about it. Because it doesn't make sense that they can jump to a specific time and place, but they just can do it once. It just doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah. Now, regardless everything that we have said, I think this was a very enjoyable movie and very thought provoking.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, David
Oh,
Bowie, transgender, fucking hot, bro. She's hot.
so I guess we're down to our last question for the show, and I'll probably go first this time, just so we can change it up. What is your final thought about this movie? And what I think, this is a great thought experiment on what if. And it's really interesting because it kind of makes sense to me. We hear how many, not that many, thank God, but we hear about uh, aviation accidents, right? And I guess someone had the thought that, what if, since time travelers, if they, in fact they are time travelers, just like they said in this movie, they don't want to be found.
Yeah.
And they have a great advantage. They have a great advantage because they know the past to be able to make themselves as much as they can, obviously, undetectable to us in the present. So, what if, as a thought experiment, these people actually never died and they just got transferred somewhere? And I think that is one of the things that I love about sci-fi is the fact that we have said this many times before, how science fiction is a thought experiment that explores all kinds of things. Um, and this is just one thing, as minimal of it as it may sound. It is a thought experiment that someone had with the concept of time travel, and I find that extremely fascinating. And I think that's one of the reasons that I love this movie as much as I do, and why I'm so attracted to this movie and this concept on the movie. Obviously, it's just a thought experiment. It's just nothing that could be considered viable, but it's that whole experience of going through the process of that thought that I really love about this. Like many other movies that we have seen, of course, we can go to the extreme. I don't know if you guys have heard our episode on Gattaca and how that movie was the reason why we have laws in place, international laws in place. So yeah, granted, this movie though is not in the forefront like say Gattaca was, at the forefront of creating rules or protecting or creating new things. But it's just really nice to be able to put this in a way that we can think about that what if. And I love this about this movie. Who wants to go next?
I'll go because I usually have a lot less insightful things to say that Ray, and then Ray can take it away with his
No pressure,
portion of the
guys.
show.
No pressure.
No pressure.
But basically, I think like you say, I second that. It's a thought provoking movie. I think that it should be watched. I think that it brings a lot of consciousness to a real issue we have that most people are not really giving thought to, which is global warming and our effects on it. Most of it, you know. Like I said before, the problem with today's society and our resolution to become actually more advanced society is to become more collective. And I think that there's a big disconnect individually on thinking as a communion. We most of us have sight 220 is what I like to say. We don't see beyond our own noses. And it's like I saw a guru explaining basically people that have halitosis or some kind of bad breath, they don't smell their own breath, but they can smell the one in front of them. It's like, God damn it. So I think that this movie brings a lot of that into place. I think that this movie is completely about that, and unfortunately was beyond its time when it comes
Yes.
to the topic matter and discussion. So I think it's a must watch, and I think it was tastefully made with the comedy put it too. Ray, take it away. Oh, and by the way, Ray, do you know that Australia is actually dated to be the most ancient civilization in the whole planet?
Well, yes and no.
They
Not
are the
advanced, but
most
ancient.
ancient.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the most ancient, like Homo erectus
Most
discovered,
ancient continuous
in mythology too.
society. I wouldn't call it a civilization. I call it a society.
Hey,
Society,
that is because
eight
they're
mans.
that's because they're from the future, man. They know what's happening, so they can go back and change things.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, you're telling me that set piece in the movie of the Time Gate building is actually in my backyard.
Yes. Yeah. You didn't see Ray waving on the edge, the far right.
Yeah,
He's in the future, man.
I was there with the barbecue, cooking stuff. That's why the atmosphere was all because I was carbonizing everything.
Okay.
The problem with humanity at the moment, if I had to put my finger on one thing, is greed.
Yeah.
Now, greed as a concept in the human psyche was originally meant to be there so that you would desire to have more than you needed in case things went south and you had to rely on what you had because things stopped coming to you anymore. But greed gets out of hand in human beings, and the more they have, the more they want. And so you have this massive concentration of, it's money, which is just a method of exchange. So these people have this huge method of exchange built up and goods and things, and they don't think about what effect that's having on the rest of the world because their greed has got to the point where it's the only thing that they have. And like I said before, everyone dies. The pharaohs thought that they could take things with them over into the realm of the dead, and that's why they got buried with concubines and servants and all their goodies in these massive tombs that they made people kill themselves building because they thought that they get to take it with them. And as far as we can tell, you don't. So it doesn't matter how much you collect within your life, you're still going to die. Death is the great leveler. And so all you're doing is destroying the hope of the future by gathering all this stuff up, you rich people. If you're going to do something useful with it, like I know Elon Musk isn't the most perfect person in the world. He has his downsides, just like we all do. But he's doing something with all this money. He's attempting to move society forward and reach out to other planets and hopefully stop humanity from dying out on this planet before we get to another one. But that aside, there's a lot of people who are just gathering resources for gathering resources' sake, and it's out of control. And if humanity as a whole is going to survive, then there needs to be some sort of redistribution and an understanding that some of that collected resource needs to be spent to stop destroying the place where the resources are coming from, or there won't be any more resources. And the whole of society, the whole of the human race will die if we can't stop this downward trend of destroying the world to get short-term gain. So, it's going to be hard for those with all the money, and that means all the power, to actually let go of it. They won't want to, but it's what needs to happen. I'm not saying to make them poor or anything. I'm just saying to give them as much as they need and not ridiculously so much more. And then, there won't be, kids in Africa, climbing through toxic sludge, trying to recycle computer parts and stuff like that. We could make the world better. It's just that the way people's minds are set up at the moment, they don't want to. They want to look after themselves.
We
So
could
we
make
need to
the
do
world
something
better,
about
but
this.
we're making it bitter.
Yeah, we need to do something about this rampant greed. I don't know how. I recognize the problem. I don't have a solution, but I mean, if we could just get rid of these military budgets and the rampant greed of the 1%, then the world could turn a corner and start improving. But I don't see that happening personally, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Getting back to this movie, it is a bit of a paradox in and of itself. The story is very hopeful in a way, but it's also suggesting that the worst possible thing does come to pass and we completely screw the world up for ourselves and everything else. And I did like the fact that what was left of humanity that was dying out was attempting to make amends for what mistakes were made and attempting to take people who should have died and give them a second chance and hopefully save humanity that way. Of course, they never asked for permission for any of these people. They just assumed that they would rather not die in a plane crash, which is, probably true for most of them.
Survivalism.
Yeah. There'd be a few that would prefer their reality just to continue on in the way that it did and would accept their deaths, but most of them probably would want to live on. But yeah, there's that whole question of where are they sending them to? So, they may just be sending them to their deaths anyway. And there's no way of telling. I mean, unless they could look in on them, which they can't because their base blew up a few seconds after the last people went through. There's no way of knowing what happened to them. It's just left as a big open question. So I kind of feel that this movie is a bit of a paradox. It's very much mired in the thinking of the late 80s. And you see a lot of that in the depictions of sexuality and all that sort of thing, which isn't considered proper anymore. And then you also see a vision of the future, which is pretty much down what we're expecting to happen anyway, that the place is going to go to hell. So it really is a paradox in that, it's mired in the past, but it's also showing a future that is expected. And it's very well told in the way that it jumps back and forth with perspectives and time travel and how confusing it all could be if something like that was ever able to function in that manner. So I do think it's a really good movie. There are a few big holes in it, but as a narrative and as a story, it pushes us to think a lot of things, as has obviously been shown by the discussion today.
Awesome. Cool.
Shall we move to the science then?
We
Yes.
are going to move to the science.
The science in sci-fi.
Do you guys have any? I've got one.
Go ahead.
I might have to dip out fairly shortly, so I might do mine first. But this is you can't have time travel without space travel rant part 3. Because I do tend now this movie actually, besides Doctor Who, which is the TARDIS is time and space,
Time Lord,
which a time Lord travels in time and space, which it needs to. I just pulled up this thing from Quora, which now I haven't gone back and referenced this because it would have taken me hours, but
I like Quora.
I just now this guy's name is Gwydion Marwack Williams, who reads a lot about astronomy, and he was trying to put forward a premise of the distance that the Earth travels in a year, right? So he said it's between 17 billion and 25 billion kilometers, which comes out in American speak as 10.5 to 15.5 billion miles, right? So that's a bit further than the corner store. Now, we sit on this
around the Earth.
We're sitting in chairs on this planet, and we don't feel like we're moving. So a lot of people would disbelieve just from their own physical experience that we are moving this far. But I've talked about all the different ways in which, you know, the Earth's moving around the sun, and the sun's moving in relative to the center of the galaxy, and the galaxy's moving in a direction as well. So there's a lot of movement, and that's why it's between 17 and 25 billion. I'll just quickly read out what this guy says. He says, the Milky Way is traveling about 550 kilometers per second in respect to the cosmic microwave background, the best standard for a true framework. We do not move in respect to nearby stars, as each has their own distinct movement. The solar system orbits the galaxy at 220 kilometers per second. Earth orbits in just under 30 kilometers per second. Adding these three speeds, since the Earth never comes back to the same place in the universe after an orbit, given around 800 kilometers per second for the total rambling movements of the Earth. So then he says there are approximately, let me get this right, 31.5 million seconds in an average year. The average in normal years and leap years, that's the average in normal years and leap years, times 800, which is the speed per second, kilometers per second, you get roughly 25 billion kilometers per year.
And
just on
top of that, we're moving 1.5 centimeters away from the Earth every year. It's not much, but in millions of years, it's going to be quite some. And it's going to affect
now. But he says, alternately, if you discount the fact that all of these movements are happening in different directions at the same time, he says it can come down to 17.3 billion kilometers per year. Now you multiply that out to 1,000 years, which is roughly the time they're saying in this movie. That's 17 trillion kilometers.
Oof.
Or roughly 2 light years.
Damn, man. They shouldn't be alive.
So in 1,000 years, if you could hang around for 1,000 years, if you hang around for 1,000 years, you would have traveled 2 light years, just by standing in one spot on the Earth. Pretty freaky, pretty large numbers. Now, I like the fact that they were showing that they could bring the tail of the aircraft into their time and unload the passengers. That meant that they had control over space and time transport, because they were able to go to where the tail of the plane was moving. And that plane was still moving, but they could grab the tail out of that time and bring it to their time and unload the passengers, which was cute. I thought that was like, oh, look at the control we've got over space and time. That's great. Good stuff. But they're doing that across 2 light years.
Yes.
Which kind of breaks my brain that they could possibly do that.
Either
the energy required.
Either that, man, or think of maybe that's why you never see a surface on Earth. So Earth becomes like a Death Star, you know? It's just a satellite. It doesn't have heat source anymore, or its own nucleus is the only thing. So they are able to sustain themselves under the surface of Earth, and they are not able to come out, which would explain why the airplane was actually brought up into such a crowd space.
Yeah.
Not sure where you're going with that, but okay.
I mean, think about it. You never saw in the future anybody walking or moving on an outside area. They're always indoors.
They had one or two shots at the outside of the building, and you didn't see any people moving. No, that's true. So the atmosphere may have been so bad that they couldn't actually go out.
Or it will be so far that maybe Earth was frozen or fucked up already. Like it's far away from the livable, hospitable zone. So perhaps we are able to figure ourselves out inside of the surface of the Earth.
For
possible.
all of you who are actually watching our YouTube video, I've actually posted a photo of what Earth kind of looked like as it moves through the galaxy.
Yeah, it's like
Well,
Dragon Ball throwing a
that
Kamehameha.
straight line is actually slightly curved because it's curving around the center of the galaxy.
Mhm.
But then it's also moving in another direction as the galaxy moves. So that's only half of the movement.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2 light years. They're managing to lock onto the back of a plane and pull it through time across
Hey,
2
man.
light years.
Halfway there
That's
to
pretty
Alpha
impressive.
Centauri. Halfway there to Alpha Centauri.
Mhm. Yeah. So the time travel is one of those things, especially when you're linking the past and the future over 1,000 years. It's a lot of distance involved that they really never take into consideration. I thought
So
I'd
it's
just
safe to
add that
say
in
that
there.
they send everybody to the death in the future.
Well, yeah, I mean they're shooting everybody into the future. Where?
To their
I
death.
mean, if they're going 1,000 years, it's probably not long enough for the world to have recovered, and that'll be another 2 light years. If they go 10,000 years, that's 20 light years. So, if you go millions of years, that's hundreds of light years, thousands of light years.
Where am I being another sun already by then?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these stories are really heartwarming and pleasant to think about in the context of people of the future realizing they screwed everything up and wanting to try and keep the human race from going extinct. But using time travel as a way to do it, I think, is probably unreliable.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
And that's about all I've got. I'm going to have to shoot off because I'm out of time. But
Okay.
thanks everybody for listening, and
Don't shoot off,
thank you
man.
guys.
Stay sober.
And I will catch you guys later.
Take care, man. Good talk.
Yeah.
So this concludes our episode for today. Thank you so much for listening to our show. I hope you enjoyed our talk. This was one of our deep conversations, right?
Hell yeah, man. That was completely stimulating to my mind. That's like the
And,
best sex I had this year.
and that's exactly what we love. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. If you want to continue those deep conversations, I invite you guys to reach out to us on Twitter. Go ahead and reach out to us on Discord. Definitely.
I'm always over there picking up people.
Yeah. So, and if you want to leave any message about this episode, just remember we have a a number that you can leave your voicemail to for the show. And is again is 305-563-6334. But yeah, let's continue this conversation. This is exactly what we love, and I hope this is the reason why you come back week and week after our show, because we totally enjoy this conversation.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much, and we'll see you
Next
time.
time.